Hey YouTube land, welcome once again to another video review from Tyconders. Now, I'm quite happy to report that this is the final set from the first 5, or Series 1, Resident Evil figures. I finally managed to find my Hunter, which is this guy here on the right. So, without further ado, we'll have a quick look at him. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the card for these guys. I do have the previous card back from the others, so they would have come on a card back very similar to this. If I just swing around the back of the box, you can see they're down here in the corner. It's the Chimera and Hunter, or Chimera, whichever way you want to pronounce it. 2-pack. So now the gimmick on this guy is, well, they both have the gimmick feature, and they never worked really well. The Chimera mostly, then the Hunter's one did work originally, but it's fairly beat up now at this stage, unfortunately. So this guy is quite articulated. He's actually one of the most articulated figures from the entire line, I think. He has a cool sculpting going on. You see he has this kind of reptilian frog-like design. He has this weird kind of face. I can bring it up close to the camera. Let me bring my camera up a bit just so you can see it a little bit better. He has this kind of cool, weird face. He has, when you're buying this thing on the secondary market, if you're going, well, you're going to have to go the route, unless it's carded, it may be missing this piece. If it falls off, what it is, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's actually supposed to be like a chunk of human flesh, or human face, that this guy has attacked. Now, in game, these guys would stalk along the corridors, and then they'd basically fly at you, swing their arm like that, and kill you in one swoop. If they were lucky, sometimes it'd hit your character and you'd might survive the first initial hit. But if you're completely unlucky, these guys would one shot kill you, depending on how much health you were on. So I think the gimmick this guy had, I can kind of see how it worked, is that it would have had a spring-loaded mechanism on the waist, and when you held back one side, it would swing around. But unfortunately, due to time, this guy has become very loose and floppy. This arm especially has become very loose, as you can see. It just droops down. This one still kind of holds its pose, so might be able to fix this arm a bit better to have a action feature, but it is quite articulated. So get the piece back in. This is initially glued in place, but over time the glue will disintegrate and it becomes loose. So hence why this thing may be missing this if you're checking it out on the secondary market, which is pretty much the only place you can get these now, or specialty comic shops that still have, or not comic shops, collectors, toy shops that might still have mint on card versions of these. But articulation, the arms could go all the way around. You have a single joint elbow, which gave quite a good bend. You have a hinge on the wrist that only goes in. It doesn't go out the other way, it just goes in, and then when it hits back in to place, this stops it from kind of bending back out this way. Head has no articulation. You have that waist articulation, which I believe was for the action gimmick. Unfortunately, mine is no longer able to do it. It's possible that when you did this, both arms would swing. It's been a while since I've checked these guys out, so I can't remember exactly what the gimmick is. He does have, or it does have the hip joint, which kind of splays out, and you have a single jointed knee. You have peg holes on the feet. The knees, when the legs are straight and you bend the knees out all the way, it gives a really weird pose. They are intended to be in a crouched position, so there is that to be wary of. So if I just get this thing back in, it's going to keep popping off. But he stands quite nicely. In fact, if I bring in the tape measure, you can see just how high it stands. So he stands just a little under the 5-inch mark. Well, to the tip of the head, I think up here by the back makes it just over the 5-inch. And then the other creature, which is a really, really cool design. I really love this design creature. It's kind of an insect, overly mutated giant bug, basically. I do wish we gotten some better, more articulated versions of this. There is, I think it's called a brain licker or something along those lines. There is a version of it in the Moby Dick line, but it doesn't look anything like this. It's a slight redesign of this creature. But you can see on the back, you can see it has like almost spider-like thorax with extra legs coming off, or extra appendages. You have this really long appendage, which is articulated. Now this guy is very limited in articulation. The legs, even though they look like they have a swivel, they don't move at all. He basically just stands in this really crouched position. If I just move back this guy, you can see how he stands. Now, if you're wondering why there's a string attached, that is part of the gimmick, which doesn't really work anymore. So the idea was you have this big kind of mouth button in the center, and what you would do is if you pressed on this, or if you fired something at it, this was supposed to pop out like a missile. The spring just never worked on this thing for me from as far as I can remember, and the reason it's on a string is so you wouldn't lose the head when it flew off. So at least they were kind of keeping that in mind. The other arm is articulated as well. You can see it has this kind of almost mutated human hand like thing going on, which is pretty cool. As far as I know, these guys are supposed to have been humans that were experimented on and DNA spliced with different things, and the T virus kind of caused extra mutations. So you can see the head is kind of skull-like, but it has these mandibles and extra things going on, and you have these really weird whited out creepy eyes with little black pupils on them. Now I think when this guy was new, they were a little bit more pronounced. Over time they've faded, but you can see the kind of creepiness of this thing, and they didn't turn up too much in the game. They weren't like a one-hit kill creature like the hunter, but they were in the game for a small while. You do come across them later on in the game. Mostly for the start of the game, you're up against the zombies, which are these guys. So you're mostly up against them and the dogs for a while, and then as the game progresses, you get more and more of the creatures, like the spider. There's a giant snake, if I remember correctly, which they never made a figure of. But any giant kind of snake-like figure would match up with these guys pretty much. So you have like a whole bunch of figures that were designed to go with these, or a whole bunch of figures for Series 1, some of which were more common characters, some of which were more later on characters. But overall, they were pretty good. I'm going to try and get these guys all stand up. Come on, Mr. Zombie. He's not going to stand, is he? Let's see if we can get him onto this peg here behind. So at least it gives him a bit of stability. Where's his peg hole? Might be able to help him stand a small bit, because I want to bring everyone in from wave 1. I might have to put him standing at the very, very, very last. His legs are always have an issue with standing. There we go. Hopefully he won't fall over. So everyone in wave 1, we'll bring in the monsters first, and then we'll get the 2 heroes. So there's the web spinner. There's the old forest spire in his rotting corpse pose. Actually, I'm probably better off just standing him up in his creepy zombie mode. His base does take up quite a bit of room. You should get the dog in, the Cerberus. Get him in without nothing, everything. And there goes Mr. Zombie, as I thought. Ooh. You see, get Tyrant in. He's also kind of floppy with the legs, but he might just stand. You get Tyrant in. I know he's standing in front of the hunter and the spider. We get Tyrant in, who you can barely see. Well, I'll pan up in a minute once I get these two in, if I get them to stand. So we got Chris. His arm is very loose and floppy, as I've mentioned in previous ones. Now, I still haven't glued his little dagger thing back in place. I really must do that. And we got the Jill Valentine. So, 2 heroes and a whole bunch of monsters. So, let's see if I can pan up just so you can see everyone in shot. So, there you go. That is the whole Wave 1 series. Or Series 1, which are also just Resident Evil 1 figures. Series 2, as I previously mentioned, are based on Resident Evil 2, with a few kind of reused parts for some sets, but most of them were all new figures. So eventually I will get around to doing a review for this thing, which is Ivy, and I've already done a review for the Hunk and Zombie set, kicking the Series 2 off, but I'm happy to say that I finally found the Hunter to complete Series 1. So hopefully you enjoy this video retro look back at some of the original old 90s Resident Evil line figures. They are quite dated for what they are. They were pretty cool at the time, but they are very limited in articulation compared to figures nowadays. It would be cool to see a new line done for these, even if it was just a, I know there's stuff out there like the Virtual Hacks Zombie Labs and stuff like that, but they don't have any kind of more obscure creatures. It's more just zombies. I'd like to see some company take on the original first Resident Evil video game franchise again and redo the monsters, even do super articulated versions. If they could even pull that off, would be cool. Like a super articulated version of the Chimera, the Hunter, the Cerberus, and that web spinner, and then do some of the other creatures that were never released, which would be kind of cool. So there you go, guys. A final look at the last of the 5 figures in Wave 1 or Series 1, and I will start cracking out videos for the Series 2 that I have. As I said, most of my Series 2 stuff is incomplete and are only half sets, so I have like the monster side of a set where I'm missing either the human character or the hero character. But it is what it is. I couldn't get it. I slowly picked them up over time, so we'll see how I can get through them. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and it's been informative, and as always, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Cheers, guys.